Drought in Lesotho continues to be a major issue, contributing to other issues, including food scarcity. So to get the latest on this story, I'm joined now by Lesotho's UNICEF Acting Resident Coordinator, Anurita Baines. She joins me now via Skype from Lesotho. And Anurita, thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon. I mean, the situation is said to be so dire that it's even reported that between January and March, I think we're looking at about 71,000 people that will be facing emergency conditions.
The situation is quite dire. It's been a year of erratic and almost no rainfall, extreme hot conditions. We're starting to see some rain now, but the impact, the cumulative impact is quite intense. So what we saw in 2019 was 3 out of 10 districts severely affected by mid-year, but now it's looking like 10 out of 10 districts are affected or in crisis mode, and almost a quarter of the entire population, in fact, are food insecure, over 500,000 people. So like many places in southern Africa, it's really an emergency humanitarian situation.
Absolutely, and from what is understood, about $34 million is actually needed if we are to even get a bit in terms of salvaging the matter.
So the UN family has put together an appeal to partners and donors in the range of $34 million, as you said. The government has also put together an emergency appeal, which is very positive, that seeks to reach the entire population and is more in the range of 70 million. We absolutely need resources, and right now it's to address the urgent needs, which is around food, as you mentioned. Also water. We're seeing many communities without access to water or very low water. The dam levels are very, very low. And of course, that has a direct impact on agriculture and the ability to harvest or to plant, to grow crops and then harvest them to not only feed your family, but also to take them to market. So you can see how this cycle has a direct impact on people's well-being and really on poverty of households.
Absolutely. Now, and you've written most of the instances, it's often been said that, you know, when Africa cries, the world almost remains silent, but when the West cries, the world answers immediately. Are we finding that the response to those pleas are coming out in good, positive response, and people are pitching in and wanting to actually aid? Or are we finding that Africa's cries are actually falling on deaf ears at the moment?
I think there are a lot of competing priorities in the news cycle. I think as well, Lesotho's not alone. I mean, it's a country that's not very high on the agenda in the Western world, but we're talking about a situation that's affecting Southern Africa. So there are millions of people that are food insecure in 9 countries. And I think it is very difficult to get the attention and the resources. One very recent positive news is that the United Nations has been able to mobilize some additional funding to support some of those immediate and urgent needs related to food, nutrition, and water. But we need to keep doing that advocacy and creating the visibility.
Yeah, and then also looking at how long, in terms of, you know, how long do we need this aid to actually get people past the food insecurity level? Because if people are food insecure right now, it appears as though it's almost on a day-to-day basis. There's not enough security to last. So how long are you predicting that once we're actually able to get that money, then people will last up until a certain extent of time?
It's a really good question. I think the urgent needs will go into the many months. We're asking for the appeal for the next 6 months. We are seeing positive signs of rain and regular rain, but it'll take a long time for the water tables to come back up and for people to see the fruits of their labor in terms of agriculture. So the urgent needs are really for the next 6 to 12 months. And in many ways, Lesotho is still recovering from the 2015-2016 El Nino crisis. Didn't quite bounce back after that. So I think it's addressing those urgent needs, which is absolutely critical, but then also looking at how we support communities to be more resilient, to have better coping mechanisms. We know this is not the first drought to hit Lesotho or Southern Africa, and it likely won't be the last. So we have to really think about the longer term support we can provide.
And then from a government perspective, what has the government's feedback been, and what has their response been to this? I know that in often cases you have the UN that is doing something, but locally, what is government saying about this crisis?
In late October, the government did declare an emergency, which was very positive in terms of getting the word out. And just in the last couple of weeks, there's actually been an appeal that looks at prioritizing the sectors and the districts and the communities and putting a price tag to it. So we are really working closely with the government. They have a disaster management committee that meets regularly, brings together all the sectors. As I say, it's not just one area. Of course, food is really at crisis levels, but there's also issues of water. There are protection issues. There's impact on the schools. Migration often increases in these kinds of humanitarian situations where people leave with their livestock looking for greener pastures, but also leave looking for work. So often going to South Africa, and that has an impact on children and on families. So it's really working with across the ministries in a range of sectors. So I think the appeal and the emergency declaration have been positive. And as I say, we work closely with them as the UN and also with the other partners.
We're going to leave it there for this afternoon, Anurita, but thanks a lot for joining us, shedding some light in terms of what is happening in Lesotho, as well as some of the aid that is needed there to really hamper when it comes to the food insecurity crisis that they're currently facing.